And I think that within your audience, people have understood that as much as things have gone wrong, and we have not been in the right path for a long time on a lot of stuff, right this moment, people are frustrated. Thanksgiving's gone by. They had to hear their relatives. They feeling a little tension, a lot of tension. I know it because I talk to people and I know that they're just keyed up. Because Jennifer, that those people that are involved in this operation on the inside, those that know what's really going on, what's in play, what the stakes are, they can't sleep. They're going to be on pins and needles all the way through this, and they need that prayerful support to get through to that perfect day. And then even with the unknowns, as much as they've plotted and planned and laid out everything, make the best plans you can, and then you give them over to God, because there's always something that you just couldn't see. But have they had to do delays? Did they have to change plans? Did they have to go with a different option? I guarantee you they've had to do it dozens and dozens of times. They've given themselves options, and they're sweating the details. Everything's in play. It's not a done deal. The war isn't over. This moment right now is like hitting the beaches at Normandy. If they thought we were going to Calais, good. But that doesn't mean it's not a fight. We're going after some of the biggest, baddest, meanest people on this planet and exposing them and rooting them out from inside our government. If people have been arrested 6 months ago or a year ago, how many of these players that have been exposed even in the last few weeks and months in these hearings? And remember, I told you this spring and summer that the hearings would be like scenes from a Godfather movie. And that's what's actually played out. So, to me, we are on schedule. There's been twists and turns, no doubt, some new surprises, some new things that weren't fully anticipated. But on the whole, I think we're right on time. And we just need to prayerfully support those that are waging this battle on our behalf on the inside to see this through. God's will be done. We were talking about perfect days, and I was thinking about that. For me, I actually have a day that I've always thought of was this perfect day for myself personally, when I'd had a very stressful month where really literally it didn't seem like anything had gone right, and it had reached a particular crescendo where this next day everything was in play, and it was really make or break at so many levels. And it was very high stress for me. And I remember I had gone to the grocery store late at night and had gotten something that I wanted, which, as a matter of fact, it was peaches. I had gone, okay, so I'm a peach. Hello, my name is Juan. I'm a peach addict. Hi, Juan. But it was a jar of peaches. I didn't want canned, and it was the only one that they had in there, actually. And I had bought this jar of peaches, and so when I got through at the checkout stand, and it was just so clear because it was like the capper to everything. She handed me the bag, and when I reached over and grabbed it, these plastic bags that have little loops in them. When I reached over and grabbed it, I was kind of just walking out. My mind wasn't there. I was other places and whatever. and I didn't get the bag through the holes. I got it between them, and so as I got just 2 feet from the counter, the bag goes flying off the counter, falls on the ground, and breaks because I didn't get my hand in the right spot. And I was so frustrated.
Oh man!
Go back and get another one. There wasn't any other ones. I had a particular kind of peaches I liked, and it was just and I went back and got a can. It still wasn't right. And I was pretty defeated in a lot of ways. I just knew that this was not on a course for things to get worked out, and it was just going to be very horrible next day. And I'd actually kind of warned a couple of people around me that I wasn't expecting a good day, and so expect some fallout, etc. And but I did pray that night, and I said, please God, I need a perfect day tomorrow. No errors, no screw-ups. Everything has to go with split-second precision. There cannot be room for any kind of a foul-up. I replayed it in my mind multiple times. I tried to work through the details, and it was a very strenuous thing for me. I don't really even think I slept but maybe an hour that night. It was very, very unnerving for me. And, I had that kind of a sense of, impending doom all day. But I kept saying, I need a perfect day. I just need a perfect day. And a couple things happened right off the bat. And that's encouraging. Something else happened I hadn't expected. And I thought, that could work. And as the day progressed, things started to round a corner, and I was, wasn't sure, but I was kind of, getting a little encouraged. But by the end of the day, some things happened I could never have anticipated. In my wildest dreams, I couldn't have thought these particular things could have happened, but they just clicked, and everything fell into place. And even stuff that I thought technically had gone wrong weeks earlier, found a way to just fit in. And at the end of the day, when the dust had settled and I was just to myself, and I remember getting in my Jag and thinking about it and just tipping my head back and thinking, with everything in play, I don't know how it could have been any more exactingly perfect. I couldn't have anticipated it. It went off like I'd even planned it to go off, and even though I had planned a lot of stuff, it ended up working out as perfectly as it could have worked out. I was just shocked, really, and said my prayer of thanks, and I was grateful, and I just couldn't believe it. But when I think of that perfect day, and I still, even now, sometimes I'll have someone say, I need a perfect day like that. And, maybe some of your listeners have some things like that. I remember I had when I was growing up, I was over at a friend's house, and her dad owned a gas station, and they were in really dire situation. And I remember being in the room, and they were saying that they were going to lose this gas station on Monday. And this was like on a Friday night. And they were just really distressed, and she was, upset because they were probably going to lose their house and have to go get an apartment. The dad was just very traumatized by all this, and, very nice guy, very mellow kind of a guy, and the mom was, pretty nice, and they were a young couple. And I remember that some neighbor friends of this couple came over, and the neighbor friend who I knew pretty well also, he says, let's just pray about this. And, we'll do what we can to help you. I don't know what we can do, but you're an important part of this neighborhood. We're kids all grew up together, and we need you here with us. And so he picks up the phone, he calls another neighbor, and they come over, and before I know it, here we are, 9:30, 10 at night, and they're having a block prayer meeting. And they're literally just praying with this husband and wife about their situation. And I remember when they got all done, and it was time I needed to head home. And I opened the door on the house, and it was snowing. I was thinking of what you said earlier today. It's snowing where you're at today.
Yeah.
And it was snowing. Well, he had a tow truck at his gas station. That's where he kind of got things started. And he kind of stretched out, I guess, and had, tires for winter season and chains and all that sort of thing. And nobody expected snow. I'm a kid, you know how it is as a little kid. If snow's coming, every kid in the world knows, no school. So, I mean, we would have known if there was snow coming, get the sleds out. Nobody had a clue that snow was coming. And about that time, the phone's ringing, and his older daughter, who's at the gas station working, is saying that the customer needs a tow. And he puts his jacket on and goes out. And we had a huge snowstorm in the area. And he had to work 24/7 for the next week, just with tows and things like that. He sold all of his tires, sold all of the chains that he had, switched cars over 24/7 from their, summer tires to winter tires and all that sort of stuff. And by the time he got through the end of the week, he'd made more than enough to catch up completely on all of his back payments and had money left over. And he and I have talked about this in the years since. And he'll tell you that was a perfect day.
Oh, wow.
Everything that had to happen happened, and nobody saw this coming. Back in those days, we didn't have the weather prediction like we have today. The weatherman would be half right half the time. And, he needed that perfect day. His family has that same station today, all these years later, and still at that same company, but he was going to lose it all. I mean, what impact it would have had, around me in that growing up period, and other people around there. And he was kind of, he's a core person in that area. Even thinking about it just now, I was thinking, I had one other day that was kind of a perfect day. I had a house on the beach when I was much younger. It was a great spot. I mean, I just loved it. I had about 600 feet of waterfront on the ocean. And I had my race boat out on a buoy line, and I had a fishing boat out there. And I'd get out in the mornings, and a lot of times I'd wait till everybody went to work, but I'd go out in the morning and I'd run the boat up the beach at 90 or 100 miles an hour. Take a couple runs, and then I'd get up where I wanted to get and lounge out on the deck and read and get some sun. And I just really, I enjoyed it. And the current there was pretty fast, and so I could go several miles up the beach, and I'd be back in front of the house in an hour. I'd race back up and come back down. It was just, it was really wonderful. And, but I had a neighbor that came over one day because I was out there at the boat, and he asked if I ever go fishing, and I really never went fishing. He says, "Well, I got everything, and let's go fishing." Well, I hadn't really known him that well, and one of his relatives also lived down there, and I says, "Well, yeah, I don't mind. Let's go fishing, sure." And this relative came over, and he tells me, the problem is this person who was a little bit older than me, I think he was only a year or two older than me, had a car accident. He had a MG TD, which was a 50s hot rod. out of England, but shoot, they're really go-karts. They look great, but they're not, compared to the stuff that I like to drive, I'll be like, oh my gosh, I'd be scared to ride in it. And he had restored it when he was young, because I'd restored cars too when I was very young, and he had crashed it and hit a pole and on his driver's door, and so it hit the left side of his head. And he was pretty damaged by that. And so when you listen to him talk, he didn't say a lot. And most of what he said was more kind of, he'd be all gung-ho emotional, and he'd have to think about the next word or two that he'd say, especially if he was, excited. And but he could understand what you said just instantly. I could talk at any speed, he'd get it instantly, but he couldn't process the words right to say it back. A lot of stroke victims will have something like that, where they, they know what they want to say, and they can't get the right word out. And so the neighbor says, well, he takes medication for my friend that's a neighbor also. He takes medication because he has seizures. And so if you're out with him on the boat, you got to be ready to grab him. If he has a seizure, it goes over the side, he's going to drown. You're never going to give him enough water. And so you got to be right on it. And but I went out with him. His mom, says, look, he's going to enjoy life. We're not going to deny him that. And we just try to be as careful as we can, but he's going to, he wants to do stuff, and if you're willing to take it on, go and do it. So we'd go out 3-4 times a week, and we'd go fish for an hour or two, and he really, really enjoyed that. And then I had something that was coming up where I was going to have to leave for a bit, and I wouldn't be around for a while, and we'd become pretty close friends. He really relied on me for that break. And that was one of my summers that was really more reading and study and a little bit of other stuff, but I had a lot of, flexibility in my schedule. So, but when it was in September and it was getting where I was about to leave, and I kind of prepped him for it, and he was pretty, it was pretty distressing to him, because he'd become pretty reliant getting out and getting some freedom and everything, and being able to be out in the boat and just do something, and he'd get so excited. He'd catch fish, and the only words that would come out of his mouth were cuss words. And the reason is just because he couldn't formulate the sentences. When he'd get all excited, and it was a string of 4-letter words and everything else, but you knew what he was saying, and sometimes he'd tell you, he's trying to get the fish in, or he's trying to do something, and I kind of understood where he was coming from. But it's because those types of words are formed on the other side of your head. His damage was on the left side of his head, and the right side of the head is more emotion, and then down in lower parts of the brain, you have different in the limbic system. You have different ways of processing information, and so the area of his brain that was damaged, it wasn't damaged to where he was non-functional. He could walk around, he could do everything. If you looked at him, you wouldn't think there's anything wrong with him. He's a strong guy, he's a good-looking guy, but he couldn't get these things out, especially when he got excited. So it was cuss words, this and that. I know some of the neighbors, didn't understand that, even some of the kids, and so they were kind of, a little nervous around him or whatever. It was just that he had this damage, but it wasn't that he couldn't think things through, didn't know what he wanted to say or whatever. So we were pretty close, and so as we were getting up on where I was getting ready to go, I'd seen that the weather was going to be good this particular day, and I was going to be free. And I said, let's just go out on whatever day it was, and I'll just fish all day. And it's probably the last day I'm going to get a chance to do it before I head out. And so we rowed out to the buoy line where I kept the boats on the buoy line off the beach, and jumped in the boat and went out and went fishing. And we had one of those days of fishing that was just so fun. And we were catching fish that were bigger as we went all day, and we, kept deciding, we got all day. If they're not such and so big, we'll throw them back. We're catching fish, and we're trying to get a bigger fish, so we don't hit our limit. And I think in that particular time it was like 4 of the ones we were going after. And so as the day went on, we caught just fish after fish. And I can't remember a day where we ever caught as many fish as that day. It was just amazing. And it was getting to the end of the day where we were going to have to head in, and the tides were changed, and, the fishing was going to drop off. And I remember we were both talking about, just one more. And we had actually thrown back a smaller fish a couple times. And we had like one fish left on the card, and it was, and that was it. And so, and I'd actually let him keep some fish. I just put them on my card, but I let him eat some of that I caught that were probably pretty good. I threw it back, just let him try to get the thing as good. So he gets a fish that is easily the biggest fish I ever saw taken out of that area, ever in my whole life. This monster. And he'd get it up to the boat, and the thing would take off, and then come up to the boat, and it'd take off. And we were at least 45 minutes getting this fish in the boat. And I just knew he was going to throw that line. And the whole time, it's all 4-letter words. He just doesn't know. He's having the greatest time of his life, and it's all 4-letter words. It's 4-letter over, 4-letter this. He pointed something and 4-letter that. But we were just having just this great day, and he gets it in the boat, and he's so excited. It was like this unbelievably beautiful, spectacular, perfect weather, shirt sleeves in September, relaxed, enjoyable, and that was the fish to keep. And it was the last fish of the day. And I remember bringing the boat up on the beach and unloading it, and his mom coming down and just like, oh my gosh, I can't believe it. Neighbors came over, they decided they were going to have a party, and we had tiki torches out, and she cooked up the fish. She did whatever he was going to do with the fish. And we had a party that had all the neighbors over, and it was just an absolute blast. And in fact, I had a big enough yard. I think kids went over and played football in front of the house for an hour, and we went out and played touch football. We just had just this incredible day. And then I expected to still be a day or two before I had to go. I got the call late that night, and I was gone. And that was it. It couldn't have happened the following day. It couldn't have happened 2 or 3 days later. That was the day. And it sticks out in my mind even now. When I came back sometime later, I found out that he had had a serious stroke, and they had to put him in a home.
Oh, no.
And I thought that, that was the day that if you could say, I was there for the one that made all the difference in the world, I got to be there that day. And so I always felt like, as much as I had other stuff going, I was busy and everything else, I got to be there and enjoy this perfect day with him and his family. And it just, it just resonates with me. And so, kind of with that in mind, I know we have a lot of people in the audience that are looking for this perfect day. They've been hearing about the Q drops and the arrests and FISA and everything else, and they're looking for this perfect day. Everything's got to happen. It's got to be, we got to be vindicated. Stuff has to happen. And they're just keyed up. And we just came off this holiday, and no doubt everybody at the dinner table that knows, what your audience has been following and looking at, they probably got peppered with questions and, well, it's never going to happen, and, you know, are you still on that crap, and you still thinking that it's going to happen, and, you know, they're taking a bit of a beating, and I feel it. I actually, it bothers me for those people in your audience that are sweating bullets that way. But, you know, I was thinking about, I was reading Ezekiel earlier in the week, and, you know, Ezekiel, kind of an interesting guy. He was this prophet in Israel when Israel was going into captivity in Babylon. He had several prophets at the same time, Isaiah and Jeremiah, others, Hosea, and others that, you know, they're all trying to warn the people. They're, you know, prophet is somebody who is speaking God's mind to the people. And God says he doesn't do anything without first announcing it through his prophets.
Amen.
So here's these prophets that are telling the people what's about to happen. And Ezekiel, I don't think I've ever heard anybody, I looked actually yesterday and today to see if anybody had ever covered this aspect of Ezekiel. I couldn't find anybody, not anywhere in the Jewish literature, Hebrew literature, the Muslim literature. By the way, Ezekiel was considered one of the Muslim prophets also. And so I looked, and what I was looking for, see, Ezekiel, it says that he was struck dumb. He couldn't talk for many years. I think it's like 7 years. He couldn't talk. And so what Ezekiel had done, he had been being a prophet before he went into this exile location, and he was known as that, but he gets to this exile location, and the trauma of being kicked out of Jerusalem, of you know, being damaged in this way, going to a you know, kind of a rural city, and being under the thumb of Babylon and everything, was probably pretty stressful. And when Ezekiel is said to have been struck dumb, I think it's very likely that he had a stroke.
Wow.
And so it says his tongue stuck to the roof of his mouth, and he couldn't speak. And so what Ezekiel did that was unique amongst all the prophets is he went to an area in the middle of the city, and he sat there near the, you know, place where we gathered in town to, you know, worship and buy their goods and do stuff like that, right in this main thoroughfare. And everybody knew he had this history as a prophet. He had relatives that were prophets, so he was kind of recognized as somebody that had stuff from time to time. But what's he do? God tells him to take a brick, a clay brick, and put it down. And then he starts forming siege walls and ramps like this brick is a city. And then there's armaments coming against it. In those days, you have a wall around the city, and they build a earthen ramp, and they would attack you over the ramp, or they bring towers up and put them right up against the wall, and all the army warriors come in. And so Ezekiel is making clay models. He can't talk, but that's the thing about when you have damage on the brain like that. He wasn't that he didn't understand anything that anybody was saying. And the parts of the brain that weren't affected were the parts that were more able to do things spatially. The left side of the brain is where you take the words that you have, the information you have, and then you knit it together into a narrative so you can create a coherent sentence. The right side of the brain is more this emotional, and then this limbic system that kind of connects it all together. And so the thing about Ezekiel is he's doing art. He's being creative, even though he's damaged, even though he's physically damaged. He's still doing God's work. He isn't, moping about like he can't function. I have a friend that's part of this audience who is not going to be with us that much longer. And every day, even though he struggles for every breath, and it's work, and he has, it's a very tenuous, every day he's helping in the internet. He's sending out messages to people. He's sending articles back and forth to people, keeping them up to speed on what's happening with this president. He hasn't disengaged. He's staying active. He can't hardly move around the house. He has to have food brought in for him. He's been going downhill relatively steadily, but he's staying in the fight and trying to do productive stuff, even though, maybe he just didn't watch TV or something, but he doesn't want to. He has things that he's focused on that he thinks are going to change the world, help the world.
Amen.
He wants to leave a positive mark.
Yep.
I have immense respect for what he does in spite of the laborious nature of it, in this exact moment of his life. It's amazing. And it's the same thing with Ezekiel. Here he is struggling. He can't talk. He's got all these issues. I think has had a stroke from the stress of this going under siege and captivity. And he's making models in the center of town because he can't talk straight. And then the other thing is, whatever words do come out of his mouth are pretty coarse words. Now, I will tell you, Jennifer, that one of the hosts that I did a show a while back, Red Pill 78, I'll just say it. And his mom, she wasn't too happy that I said a couple bad words. And so I promised her I wouldn't say bad words. I promised you. And so she was a little upset. He says, yeah, she probably won't wash her mouth out with lye. And, but if it was Ezekiel, she probably have to use 3 bars because, again, what was he doing? He was doing the same thing as my friend was. He was using words to describe things that he said was going to happen there in the city. And they were not pleasant words. And they were pictures that were pretty coarse. And I think because he couldn't stitch the words together well, so he was using those. In the Bible, Zechariah. If we go to Revelation, it says, "Let no man take away from any of the words in these prophecies, or add to them, or let these horrible things happen to them if they do it." So then you go back to Zechariah, and in the 15th century, the Nazarites who helped translate it, they tried to come up with easier ways of saying some of these words that weren't as offensive as what the original Hebrew would be read as. Stuff that you could say at church with all the grandmas in the front row and the little kids and everything else that wouldn't, be horrible. And the Nazarites, to their credit, by the way, they did include the original Hebrew word with the text, but then so that it wasn't that they were changing it, but it was there if you wanted to go decipher it. They didn't change the original Hebrew, but the words they'd use, to lie with, things that were more, as an adult, you could figure it out, but it loses some of the grittiness that was intended when God is speaking through his prophet Zechariah. He's giving him words that are pretty harsh, and those, some words you vent frustration emotionally, and you can't do it with a well-organized, fluid way of saying it sometimes. It doesn't convey the same meaning. I pulled up I've mentioned to your people this Forgotten Books of Eden. I really enjoy the writings. And by the way, people get all upset about the Bible. And it's not the Bible, but it's not the Word of God. Well, who decided what books would be in the Bible? During Constantine's time. They looked at all of these writings, and then they kind of came to this particular one that would unite the kingdom and that everybody could agree on, etc. But it doesn't mean that there was a lot of politics involved. 66 books of the Bible, we know how these numbers played with. Does that mean that it's all the works of inspired works of God that were written? Christ himself quotes from Enoch. And by the way, there's 2 books of Enoch, so don't be confused. There was an Enoch that was the son of Cain, and there was an Enoch that was the son of Seth. So you see these scriptural works that are in the Bible, and then people, it's not the Bible. I'm not reading. Well, from a narrative standpoint, from a history standpoint, Josephus, he was a historian for the Romans, trying to understand and convey back to Rome the history of the Jews. Useful reading. There's stuff that, people question on stuff he said or why he said it, but pretty doggone good. He was under orders to get it right. And I think on the whole he probably did. But this Forgotten Books of Eden, I think, are just amazing. The translation that's just recently been brought out by Rutherford Platt Jr. Did the editing, and it's non-canonical. It's not part of the biblical canon of Scripture. So, you can say, well, it's inspired Word of God. Well, I don't know if I'd say that. It is inspired. It may not be perfect, or it wasn't kept perfectly over the years unchanged. There may be some changes in it that occurred. Part of the reason that the books of the Bible are so widely accepted is because there was good records, duplicates going way, way, way back. And so we know that they appear not to have been altered significantly. If they were, and we can do it with Bible code, we can cross-reference stuff and see whether or not there has been changes or not. But anyway, the Lost Books of Eden, I just wanted to read you one paragraph. It's from the 11th chapter, and it's the 12th verse. And it's talking about the children of Seth who lived up on this mountain and near the Cave of Treasures, where Adam's body was buried, and some of his sons. And they lived up on this mountain. Cain and his people lived down in the valley, the black soil. And so we see that, Sodom and Gomorrah were in a valley. Lot lived in the valley, and Abraham lived up on the side of the hill. There's kind of a history there. But anyway, talking about the people that lived on the top of this hill, the children of Seth, it says, they were happy, innocent, without sudden fear. There was no jealousy, no evil action, no hatred among them. There was no animal passion. From no mouth among them went forth either foul words or curse, neither evil counsel nor fraud. For the men of that time never swore, but under hard circumstances, when men must swear, they swore by the blood of Abel the just. And I look at that and I go, but under hard circumstances, when men must swear, there's times when the only proper reaction to things that happen isn't some flowery, colloquial response. The only proper response is a guttural, emotional cuss word. Because it forms in a different part of your brain. It has different meaning to it. I was talking with a friend of mine earlier today about situations in combat, and he was relating that that's so much of it. There was always communication that happens when you're talking over the mic, and it's oftentimes it's a cuss word or two or three. Everybody knows that to expect it because you're in a very high stress moment. The bullets are flying. Life and death is in the air, and it goes a certain way. The conversation is a certain type, and you can be all nice the rest of the time, but when you get in that moment, that situation, it kind of goes out the window. Even guys that are pretty laid back. So I'm thinking back to Ezekiel, and of course, if Red Pill's mom was there, she'd have had to wash his mouth out with 3 bars of soap with all the stuff he talked about. He talked about the land, the people. He raised the fact that they had the people were whoring about, and that they had all sorts of idolatry, including male sex parts, and that they were constantly taking, stuff from sexual activity and spreading it around. And so it was very coarse. He was really describing a time that's not that different from what we have right now. You got the Maria Abramoviches out there, and they're taking spirit cooking, and they're using these bodily fluids and smearing them around, making art. And, one thing that's missed on people when you're looking at the WikiLeaks stuff and the explanations in other places with Abramovich and like that, she's talking about fresh this and fresh that. When they're having these dinners, having these art things, they have people that are doing very public stuff in order to create the material to do her art and make these things. It's a very filthy, grotesque activity, the whole thing. And so here Ezekiel is seeing these same things in his land, and he's saying that God's not going to, stand by. Zechariah was the same way. In fact, Zechariah 14:2, the word that Zechariah uses is shegel. He says, you the people, are shegel. So, I can't say the words because I promised you I would. And Red Pill's mom that I wouldn't. So let's just tone it down for prime time. The word that translates best, according to some of the people that look at it, starts with the 4th letter of the alphabet, and it's the 6-word version or 6-letter version that ends with the starts with the 6th letter of the alphabet, ends with the 4th letter of the alphabet. So 64. We've done gematria and we're putting numbers and stuff. But the problem is, you kind of have 2 numbers. It's now you're back to left brain because you got to formulate that, stitch it together. So maybe we don't go to that. Maybe we just call it, forward. So people, you keep this up, you stay on this course, you're forward, okay? And everything you have, everything you do, everything you want to be, it's all going to be forward. And your wives, your children are going to be forward. Because the enemy's going to come in here and pour it all up. That's what Zechariah is saying. And the people, God wasn't playing nicey-nice. He was talking in a language. They had so degenerated, they had so collapsed down that you couldn't even have the real conversation with these people because they were all really had fallen so far. So he's talking to them in a language they understood. If you really want to get right down to it, that's one way of looking at it. I mean, you could say it 64, but take two words. I'd transistorize it down. I say transistorize. For those of you who don't know, you don't see it anymore today. When I was little, I remember we had tube radios and tube TVs. And so I remember we were watching stuff with the early space launches, and the TV went out, so I didn't have anybody else around, and I wanted to watch this, so I took the back of the TV off and looked at the tubes to see which one was bad, because they just have a big black spot on them. I couldn't see it, so I took all the tubes out. And I put them in a paper bag, and I went to the hardware store where they had a tester. And I put them all in this tester that's, just a little kiosk thing. And I tested the tubes till I found the one that was bad. And it was like $7.50, which was, a lot of money in those days, but I had it. And so I bought the right tube, put all my tubes back in the bag, the box with the new tube, go back home, put it back in the TV, and got to watch the rest of the space launch. And, but that was the way it was in those days. And then because of the whole NASA program and the space stuff and all that, transistor was condensed. You didn't need a vacuum tube. And I remember I got, for something, I think it was a birthday or something, my brother sent something to me from overseas. And it was a transistor radio. And so it took a 9-volt battery. I could hide it under my pillow. I could listen to it late at night. I listened to late night talk shows as a young kid, because I didn't really enjoy the music that much. I enjoyed the talk stuff. I'd learn stuff even as a young little guy. And so anyway, when we talk about transistorizing something, we make it smaller, make it more condensed. So we don't want to say the 64-letter, word. We'll just abbreviate it to Forward. And then, then we kind of go back to other words that are out there. These people, they're very much into a word that starts with the 19th letter, and the middle word is the 5th letter. So that's 24, and then the last letter is also 24. So, 24, 24. Now we're back using the left side of the brain. It screws everything up. We just say 44, 44. So, the Maria Abramoviches, they're all locked into 44, and they want to see everybody get forward. You got to create a language. That's what they did in re-editing the Bible. Came up with other words that would work from the pulpit, because nice people don't talk that way. But that's not the way that God addressed them back in Zechariah's time. He was very direct and coarse. So, sometimes maybe it's not wrong to have some of those words even in nice places, because he was trying to convey to them, you're going to be, you like 44? Okay, well, you're going to be covered in all the product of it. You're going to be swimming in it, and it's going to be from your enemies. And you want to whore around, you'll get what you were asking for. Not because God doesn't love you, he loves you, but he's giving you over to what you have desired. And these people were, remember that part of the fall of Israel was because they were worshiping Baal on the hillsides. It wasn't just that they were 44 addicts and interested in foring anything that moved. They were also sacrificing their children to Baal. And God wouldn't put up with that. When you think about it, that's kind of a lot like maybe what's going on or been going on in our country. Remember, when WikiLeaks happened, all these people that, Vice is going to bring down the House and it's going to, change everything, and these people are going to jail. Well, they are going to jail. They're going to jail for treason and sedition and for stealing elections. And that's going to happen. Absolutely, no question about it. As those things do happen, there are going to be other revelations that will come out that are going to be shocking. We won't start with those things. We'll start with the stuff that's pretty straightforward to prosecute, pretty easy to prove, and that get us started down the right road. The thing, though, that pushed us over the top to get President Trump into office was the WikiLeaks disclosures. The FISA hadn't actually been disclosed yet. We didn't know anything of these other crimes that were done trying to change the presidency. And what was in the WikiLeaks? The Spirit cookie, the Comet Pizza, all those people. That's when people went, oh my gosh, no way. People like Linda McAllister, she has said on several occasions that was when she just knew it. This is all true. And I realized it. One thing that just happened in the last few weeks, a judge out of Lithuania, I can't pronounce her name, but you just punch in Lithuania, judge, she was deported from Chicago. She was talking about the pedophilia out of Lithuania in government positions, government offices, people involved, and there's a number of cases that have been going on. It's just horrible, and they go all the way back, 10 and more years. She's been deported because what she said, they're saying it wasn't true. Well, there's quite a bit of evidence that it was true, and she needs our prayers. But these things are coming to the fore. It's not just the graft, not just the billions, even trillions that have gone to other countries, been laundered, and is coming back to people on the payoff in government here in our country. It's not just about the money flowing. It's about something else that's under all of that, this Luciferian satanic operation. And that's what WikiLeaks exposed. What pushed people's button finally that moved them over the top was those disclosures. But for this moment right now, I think we start with something else. Here in our country, we have a lot of things that are similar to what was going on in Israel. In Israel, one of the things that God was, through his prophets, was denouncing was that they had their pole gods right beside the Ark of the Covenant there in the temple. So God's presence is going to be right beside this pole god. Well, what's the pole god? Again, we can take 16, first letter of that word, and the last letter is 19, or the plural is still 19. So, it's 35. We got to shorten it because it's a left brain, right brain thing, so we just say the fives, So these people that want to worship their fives, these pole things, they place them all over around our country. The center of our capital has one of these monuments cult. This is a cult. They occupy the highest offices in the land. They're orchestrating wars between their relatives. Not because they're actually that upset with the relative. Why? Because it's a way of controlling us, using our wealth, our energies, our children in blood sport in these wars to bring about their new world order. While we're fighting the war, giving up children and life and sacrificing in these efforts, they're laughing behind the scenes because they're managing us to their end, this global new world order. So, even Isaiah uses a word that translates to a four-letter word, and the first letter starts with the third letter of our alphabet, and the last letter is the 20th letter. And so Isaiah, it was turned around there too, because it was a little bit coarse, and he's talking about that all their nakedness would be exposed, and all of their evil deeds would be exposed. And so, this, that's a, 3 and 20, that's 23. Well, 23, anything 23 affects the whole world. We just say threes, these threes are affecting all of us. It's a horrible thing. God isn't taking it lightly, and it's up to us to, understand what's going on and, say, well, are we going to put up with it or not? Are we going to, say, not in our country, not in our lifetime? We're not putting up with it. Just an aside, I believe that before this is all over, that we actually are going to see these pole god monuments broken by some divine act.
Amen.
That I will know that God has taken up our cause, has heard our prayers as a group, when he cracks the foundation and knocks it off the foundation of that pole monument in the center of our country, in the center of our capital. And just as the president and Melania have said, Satan's kicked out of the White House, they built all these monuments to their Luciferian beliefs there in our capital, but they will be knocked off their foundation. Please, Father, before this is all over, and we'll get our country back. And I know that there's a lot of people who know that's never going to happen. They don't believe that. You know what? That's the whole point of raising Ezekiel earlier, even all of the prophets. When Ezekiel was prophesying with models, I mean, you got to think about that. He isn't even talking. He's just building clay models in the street. They all know he's a prophet. He's trying to show them this is what's going to happen. He's doing it with models.
That was his meme, Juan. That was like his meme.
Yeah, exactly. That's a beautiful way of saying it. Wow. Great insight, Jennifer. Great insight. That's why I like you so much. You're so good at this. Roseanne says you're a genius, by the way, and I agree with her.
Oh, that's very, very kind.
Yeah. So, but yeah, that was his meme. Isn't that a wow? That just resonates with me instantly. And so, but there was a lot of people. Oh, that's not going to happen. No, not worried about that. He's telling people. The other prophets are telling people, your kids, your young boys are going to be castrated and taken into slavery as eunuchs. They all have high voices like Michael Jackson. They'll never develop. Your daughters are going to be sex slaves in Babylon. The whole country is forward. You're all going to be forward. And anybody that they don't want, they're dead. They're toast. They're gone. They aren't going to be useful in some way. The enemies are going to kill them. They're going to plunder their houses. They're going to take everything. And I think that within your audience, people have understood that as much as things have gone wrong, and we have not been in the right path for a long time on a lot of stuff, right this moment, people are frustrated. Thanksgiving's gone by. They had to hear their relatives. They feeling a little tension, a lot of tension. I know it because I talk to people, and I know that they're just keyed up. The only thing I can say is, and I had hoped that we would see some of this last year, the Q memes and the Q drops relate to the Revolutionary War. The conspiracy against President Trump was concocted and orchestrated out of England. And that's why the Revolutionary War with England as the opponent is so correct. These are globalists who are working from those locations, and these people that were involved in these seditious crimes against us as a people, not just against President Trump, it's against us, to deny us a fair election. And then, even when it wasn't a fair election, to try and overturn the result because their crooked ways of conducting the election failed because the results were so overwhelming. And they're trying to control who we get as the president from foreign shores, these globalists. And these people that are in our government who are on the take, who are really mobsters involved in RICO conspiracies. If you still think that Biden and his son innocently were involved in the best interest of the United States, then you're probably really you're not being honest. You're probably part of their operations. You don't see that, then you don't want to hear the truth. That same thing Ezekiel ran into. People didn't want to hear the truth. They just shut their ears. That's why Ezekiel had, and God himself was communicating them in grunts and groans and four-letter words, trying to get through to them one last little shot before it was all going to come falling down. And here in our country, even though it's a small number, I still think that if you walk down the street and ask 100 people what they know about Q, you might get 3 or 4 that know about it, and one that actually can talk about it very coherently, intelligently. That's the president's backdoor communication. The Q team has done a masterful job of building a core. Your audience is part of that core. There are other phenomenal audiences that are part of that core. But we haven't got that moment yet that clearly defines what we need. And, I guess what I'm looking for, what I'm praying for, is that perfect day, that perfect week, that perfect month. And I think we're very close to it. Dark to light, 21st of December, 2019. You know what time is the dead center of the winter solstice in Washington, D.C.? It occurs at 11:19 p.m. Kind of a reverse 9/11, 9111. And if you add up the 21st plus the 12th month, that's a 33. The 911 for the 33 Club. These people with their secret organizations, their, secret handshakes, all of their bullshit stuff to mess with us. I believe that the Q team, that the president, that this operation has dialed in options. And the next big window that I see might be that. The other thing is with this FISA disclosure and some of these other things, dark to light, that happens during a full moon. Light in the darkness. The 21st, in the way that these people look at this stuff, they have like a 3 days thing, and then looks like the sun's coming back up, moving north again. And so 3 days after the 21st one, looks like the sun is actually visibly starting to come back. It's Christmas Eve. And that's, when we have the moon completely go to black. And then it starts again going back to light shortly after that. This dark light theme, this winter solstice headed back to the heated day of the summer. Is that when these arrests might happen? I don't know. Would that be a good guess? I think so. Am I predicting it? No. I might be forecasting it. I'm looking at which way the weather's going and stuff like that, and saying, that would work.
December 21st.
Yeah, December 21st.
Okay.
I don't know exactly when that perfect day is going to get here for us. But I know it's coming. I know that all these things that everybody in your audience has been anticipating and hoping for and talking about, we're very close. And just like they poo-pooed Ezekiel and Isaiah, Hosea, Jeremiah, they didn't want to hear what Jeremiah had to say. They sawed him in half. They don't like to hear those prophets with what they say. They poo-poo them. They might even know it's from God, and then that's whatever. So, they do it with God's prophets. Don't think that you're going to be necessarily any better if you're doing your job and you're saying what needs to be said and you're pointing it out and doing it in as appropriate a way as possible. Telling these guys, hey, we don't get this under control, we're all forward. Okay? The whole country's forward. We can't do that. We're not going to have the Maria Abramoviches and all the little 44 parties forwarding us up. We're going to put an end to it. We're going to stop it. We're going to knock their monuments off their foundations. God himself is going to do it. We're going to get our country back. And we're going to lead the way for the rest of the world to stop this insanity that's been going on. That's the way I see it. The thing we have to remember here is that we're at this moment. There was a valley of decision moment in the Old Testament. And the people were gathered in this valley of decision. And those that were going to choose the right path, the good path, separated from those that were going to choose this evil, dark path. And God himself did the judging. It wasn't the people deciding. God himself was doing the judging. We're at this fork in the road, this moment in time where we have to make a conscious decision. And I fully believe that your listeners that are listening to what we're talking about here today have already, the reason they even stayed through this whole long discourse today is because they're those people that have already made their mind up that they're going to make a correct choice. They are looking for that perfect day when justice is done, when these evils are winnowed out of the land, separated, and those evil doers, their evil deeds, not just the corruption that's shown from the FISA stuff, not just the seditious people and the treasonous people in high places in government with their RICO conspiracies, not just that they're arrested, that they're taken off the streets, that they're judged for their actions against us, the voters, not against Trump, against us. He's the figurehead on this. They were directing against him, but they were really directing against all of us. And we're at that Y in the road. Big doors turn on tiny hinges. We're at this hinge moment as a country. Dark to light. That's what this is all about. And I understand that people are, their feet are dragging a little bit. They've been beat down by people around them. They've, have a hard time holding on. And people are rattled in their cages a little bit about nothing's happened. Nobody's got things. A lot's happened. A lot has happened. And not everybody that we're dealing with is going to agree with us even after all of this is exposed. There is none so blind as those who will not to see. There's people out there that just don't want to see it. They don't want to believe it. They don't want to know it. They don't want anything to do with it. They're not going to be part of it. At some point, we just turn at the fork in the road and we go through the other door. And they take a door where they're going, and we take a door at the heavenly path. And that's what this moment is all about. That's what your listeners are all about. We need to keep the faith. We need to understand what's in play. And we're not going into captivity, and we're not going to allow our children to be forward, our houses to be looted and ransacked like they've been doing. We're reversing this. We're unwinding this. We're taking our country back. And it's not going to be without some kind of a battle. We're really only partway through this war. Somewhere soon, a day very near to now, is that perfect day. And it's going to be one heck of a day. But it's still just the beginning of the second part of this battle. As these people are taken off the streets, and then we try to get our country back on the right path and unwind, dissolve, eliminate so many of these horrible things that have been done in our name as best as we can with God's light, God's willingness. That's our part in this, and to, assist the president by support and the Q team by support. And we don't have to be over aggressive, but we do need to hold the line, stay steadfast, and understand that that day is coming. It's not that far away. Just hold on a little longer. We're almost there. Perfect day is just around the corner. In thinking about the perfect day that we need right now, I like a perfect day because I like for everybody to be able to say, yep, it happened like we anticipated. Bad people have been taken into custody. Justice is coming. There's some clarity that this isn't going to be allowed any longer. We're not playing with them anymore. There's this need that, maybe a little bit selfish from some of us just because we want to be able to say, I told you so, and I get that. And, there's justice going to be done. Who will be valiant for justice' sake is the scripture. But I also think of the Q team and the president. They have a tremendous effort that they have gone to now. A little over 2 years to educate, to bring facts to the fore, to collate this information in a way that teased through a looking glass darkly to let us see into the future, see what these people were all about, see what was going on. We have Assange, who did the WikiLeaks. Don't confuse Assange with Snowden. Snowden was not a good person for what he did. Assange, he published something that I think we needed to know as a people, as a country, and it was true. And I think there was some divine aspect to that because that was office, and were woken up, just like Linda McAllister and others. So all of those people are in need of their perfect day, just like that one that I had. There's a lot of moving parts here. There's a lot in play. There's so many aspects to this that most people cannot even begin to comprehend the preparation, the planning. And when it comes down to those moments, those days, those weeks, it really does have to go off with exacting precision. Each domino hitting the next one, causing the next group to fall, splitting off these other ways. And there's a lot of precision planning, engineering, anticipation. I know these folks are sweating bullets. And if they could do it 1 second faster, it would already be done. But there's a cancer in the land. There's an evil loose in the land. And you can't miss big portions of it or small. They're trying to be thorough to give us that was then, this is now, perfect day. Justice is coming. And those in your audience, rather than being frustrated, need to pray like I did that night before that critical day and bring it to pass correctly. That by some divine act, intervention, involvement, that we get God's will done in our country to save the soul of America. That's really what this is all about. That's what this moment's all about. That's what I hope your listeners will focus on. Be part of the solution, even in prayer, just like my friend that's spending his last days in this world trying to make a difference and wake people up and be part of supporting them and waking them up. This is not the moment to lose heart. The bullets are flying. Hear a bad word. If the emotions fly a little bit, so be it. But this is that moment to double down, stay focused, and be part of this rebirth in America. Those people that are involved in this operation on the inside, those that know what's really going on, what's in play, what the stakes are, they can't sleep. They're going to be on pins and needles all the way through this, and they need that prayerful support to get through to that perfect day. And then even with the unknowns, as much as they've plotted and planned and laid out everything, make the best plans you can, and then you give them over to God, because there's always something that you just couldn't see. But even just like with my situation, even there, the things that I thought had gone wrong earlier ended up being part of what actually made it go exactly right. And even here, have they had to do delays? Did they have to change plans? Did they have to go with a different option? I guarantee you they've had to do it dozens and dozens of times. They've given themselves options, and they're sweating the details. Everything's in play. It's not a done deal. The war isn't over. This moment right now is like hitting the beaches at Normandy. If they thought we were going to Calais, good. But that doesn't mean it's not a fight. We're going after some of the biggest, baddest, meanest people on this planet and exposing them and rooting them out from inside our government. If people have been arrested 6 months ago or a year ago, how many of these players that have been exposed even in the last few weeks and months in these hearings? And remember, I told you this spring and summer that the hearings would be like scenes from a Godfather movie. And that's what's actually played out. So, to me, we are on schedule. There's been twists and turns, no doubt, some new surprises, some new things that weren't fully anticipated. But on the whole, think we're right on time. And we just need to prayerfully support those that are waging this battle on our behalf on the inside to see this through. God's will be done. Amen.
Amen.